Well, Browns fans, it was an eventful night out here in Berea, Ohio, where the Cleveland Browns made a selection in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. But it wasn't where anybody expected, and it certainly didn't come the way that anybody expected. Spencer German here with you in Berea, trying to wrap up a long night, but we have a conversation to still get through. Anthony Moeglin back home on the home front, sort of tuning in tonight and following along with everything. And right out of the gate, we had some fireworks, Megs. It's why the NFL draft is one of the best maybe made for sports or made for TV sporting spectacles that there is. It's great theater that you just can't predict. You never know what's going to happen. And that's very much what happened with the Cleveland Browns, because after a month or so of speculation that it was Travis Hunter, the Browns were all in. They loved this guy. Andrew Berry's sitting there calling him a unicorn a week ago, and they decide not to pull the trigger. They trade back with the Jaguars to number 5, and they ultimately take Mason Graham. And the Jaguars end up walking out of here with Travis Hunter tonight. It's two separate things I want to talk about. It's Mason Graham, the player, and what he kind of brings to the table, which we'll get into coming up. But more so the trade itself, I think, is a good place to start, because it did catch a lot of Browns fans off guard, and I think people were sort of surprised, and I think people were disappointed that the pick didn't end up being Travis Hunter and that they made this move down the draft board.
And Spence, I think two things can be true. Like, I think that, we were talking a little bit pre-show, and we're going to talk about it here now. Like, I honestly think the trade's good. Like, I think it was a solid. You got a boatload of capital, and I come from the mindset of, like, screw your draft capital. The goal is to win. The goal is to win football games on Sundays, right? And, like, with that in mind, it's like, yeah, I was in that disappointed group of, like, man, you get so, because everyone's kind of like banging you over the head with it. Like, Travis Hunter's a Cleveland Brown, like basically like get him a house in Cleveland and Strongsville probably. And like, he's going to be a Cleveland Brown. And then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. And I think that, like I said, two things can be true. I think it's totally fair for everyone to be disappointed. I'm certainly disappointed. I was disappointed. But as you look at it and the dust settles, we got another pick in the second round at 36. You get next year's first round pick for a team that's probably not going to be a top half of the league team. And you fall back 3 spots and get a guy who's probably more suited for where you're at right now as a franchise. I think all in all, the trade is actually a good one, but it does kind of hurt to swallow, because everyone just wanted the flashy Travis Hunter instead of the meat and potatoes Mason Graham.
It didn't end up being sexy is I think a good way to sum it up. And I'll say this, like, we've talked a lot about the apathy that surrounded this team, especially at the end of last season and during the season. It's unlike anything I've sort of felt around with this Browns team in this town for a long time, because people love the Browns, and it was disappointing to see so many people just not care about them late in the year last year. And so you get the disappointing season. Yeah, it ends, and the payoff was supposed to be, okay, you got the number 2 pick. You get to make this big splash. You get to make a lot of noise and get people fired up about the future, because you're going to draft this franchise, face of the franchise type player, whether it's a quarterback or not. And in the end, all you get is a defensive tackle. Defensive tackles aren't sexy. Like, and I don't mean that like from a physical standpoint. I just mean like from an optic standpoint for fans. I don't know. There's probably some defensive tackles out there who people do consider sexy in that way, but you know what I mean? Like, from the standpoint of building a football team, people aren't, checking the box scores and like watching the highlights necessarily of defensive tackles, unless they're big, like, draft guru guys who are trying to like study these players. Right. So it's not a sexy pick. And people, I think, came into tonight wanting sexy. They wanted Travis Hunter, the guy who can play both ways and can be electrifying on offense and provide an offensive spark for this team that desperately needs it. So I totally understand that. But I think, to your point, like, yeah, when the dust settles on this thing, if this was the beginning of the Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski tenure, people would have loved this move like 4 or 5 years ago, like trading back and getting more capital and taking a solid defensive lineman that could just like wreak havoc for you in the middle of this defense, especially with Myles Garrett on that front as well. Like, there's so much that comes with this, but the draft capital is the biggest part. And I want to talk about that here next, because to me, Megs, Jimmy Haslam's comments were sort of ringing through my head throughout the rest of this night after that move went down, where he's telling you straight up, like, we're not going to force the issue at quarterback. This is going to take a couple years to figure out. And tonight the move they made was a move that tells you it's going to take a couple years to figure this thing out. Like basically what I'm trying to say is this is a rebuilding team.
Yeah.
So if you got excited because you thought like, well, Travis Hunter is going to like make us more exciting and give us a shot and be this transcendent player, that could be true. Like he could be transcendent, but what was he really going to do on a Cleveland Browns team that is in a rebuild spot right now? Like they have a lot of needs. And this Andrew Berry talked about maximizing the number 2 pick. With the move they made tonight, trading back, taking Mason Graham, getting the extra draft capital, he maximized the number 2 overall pick because he got more picks to build this roster out over the next couple of years. And he had a really, really solid, elite even, the best defensive tackle in this class, and added a player that's going to be a frontline starter for you. Like, there's not a lot to really complain about when you really look at this on the surface. It's just people wanted something bigger and splashier, and I get that. But this is a good move for the Browns, and it sets themselves up for the future to turn this roster over quicker because tomorrow, for example, they got a second rounder from the Jags for tomorrow, number 36. They have 4 picks in the combined in the second and third round at this point. Like they can address offense there, and they can really add a number of players in these first 2 nights of this draft that could contribute pretty quickly here in Cleveland. And that was, I think, what Andrew Berry had his eyes on top of adding a first rounder next year, which that
you never know.
You know, the tea leaves on that are you're setting yourself up to maybe trade up and get a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and where I think that, well, that's another good point. You know, if you have 2 first rounders, you can really make a really big stab at jumping up. But I think to your point, you texted me like, you know, probably what the pick went in or the trade went in at 825, and you texted me probably shortly thereafter saying this team is in a rebuild. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, let's just tell the truth about it. Like, let's just tell, like, let's be honest about it, right? You know, they're going to bring in Joe Flacco. It's going to be a lot of fun, but you bring in Travis Hunter, and it would have been awesome tonight. It would have been awesome probably next year. There'd be a lot of really good plays that would happen and a lot of really fun things. But ultimately, this team is not ready for a Travis Hunter type player, you know, and that's the hard part is like you feel like it should be, but it all connects back to that one thing. You have a bad quarterback contract right now that is going to weigh you down, and you need to get as many young cats in here as you possibly can. And they set themselves up to do that. It sucks. It's disappointing. But if you're going to tell me you get the best defensive lineman in the draft, and along with that, you're going to get another second-round pick and another first-round pick, I think you take that. You know, I don't think you scoff at it. Yeah, it's disappointing, but you know, I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to fall for me in the category of the right move.
We can come back to the quarterback next year conversation when we talk about what lies ahead for this team tomorrow, or I guess today because it's 1 a.m. But I do want to talk about Mason Graham, the player, because as much as people are disappointed in this, again, it's not the sexy pick, all these different things. Mason Graham is a dog, man. Like he wreaks havoc in the middle of defenses. And I think back to, I mean, Megs, you covered Ohio State this year. For the cluster of sites here for Ohio State Buckeyes on SI. You saw him firsthand at that Michigan game. I saw him firsthand at the Michigan game. I was there as a fan. Like the Ohio State's road, like the mental roadblock they have against that team aside, they played into what Michigan does best, and that allowed Mason Graham to really eat in that game. Like I think about how much he dominated in that game. You saw him during the run to the national championship they had in 2023, where he dominated in the trenches. You know, a lot of his highlights are like him sacking or chasing after Jalen Milroe in that game against Alabama that year. Like he is an aggressive, pass rushing defensive tackle in the middle of a defense that is going to fit Jim Schwartz's style perfectly. A defense that wants to rotate guys in and out, but also wants to be able to sort of generate pressure from different places. And think about just picture for a second him playing on a defensive line with Myles Garrett on the outside, who's going to command a ton of attention because he's a defensive player of the year from just a couple years ago. So while he's getting double or triple teamed, the Browns are going to be able to generate pressure from the middle And I don't think they've had that element to this defense in quite some time. Like they haven't had they haven't been able to really generate pressure from the middle. They had Dalvin Tomlinson, but he was more of a space eater guy who just kind of like held his own and made some plays. But this is somebody who can truly get after the quarterback from the middle of the defense. And with all the attention Myles Garrett draws, he has a chance to really have an impact year one and be put up some solid numbers, I think, in his first year as well.
And I think to add on to that, you talk about who he's going to be lined up against, right? Or lined up next to is Mike Hall. Like Mike Hall is going to be, he's in that top tier type of a guy who can make impact plays, and they're both very young. You look.
Well, and Malik Collins, who they added this offseason, who I think is an underrated defensive tackle. He was released by San Francisco, but his advanced stats tell you like he's a guy that he had one of the highest, I believe, pressure rates last year from the defensive interior guys. Like, there's going to be a rotation of guys there. Hall being one of them, Collins being one of them. Not to sorry to interrupt you, but like they have a solid. He sort of solidifies that middle of the defensive line group, and I think that's huge.
There's no doubt about it. And I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here because I've been on our show talking about, hey, it's a good defensive line is really nice, but I want offense. And I think I was gonna, dude, when we were prepped, when I was setting up the show, I was gonna screenshot our drafts, our mock drafts from the other night when we recorded, just because we were.
Yeah, what a waste of time those were.
Brother, we went offense. Both of us did, and they're gonna go defense, offensive line, But the point is that. This team, and it kind of was right in front of our face the whole time, right? Andrew Berry's made no qualms about it. He's trying to build this Browns team like the Philadelphia Eagles, right? So when you start reading the tea leaves, you start doing stuff like this where, hey, instead of taking the flashy fun pick, we went and bolstered our defensive line. You can kind of start to see, hey, if they're going to try to win a little bit with the group that they have, they're going to do it in a certain way. And that certain way isn't taking a swing for a guy who has unbelievable potential, but maybe isn't the right fit for what they're looking for.
You mentioned building the team like the Philadelphia Eagles. This was a Philadelphia Eagles pick. Like this is something that Howie Roseman would 100% do. Dude. Yeah, so it certainly fits that billing. I also think too, the offensive needs are front and center. We all know what they are at this point. They need a wide receiver. They need a running back. They need a tackle. Still need a quarterback, obviously, as well. At some point, they were going to have to go defensive line because it was a need, whether it's edge, whether it's defensive interior. They were going to have to make a move there at some point. I mean, that's why Abdul Carter, there's a lot of people saying take Abdul Carter at 2. Like, it was something they were going to have to address at some point. You did it in a way where you still got a guy who's a top 5 talent in this class, but also got a bunch of draft capital out of it, which is, again, why I say it was a good move. It was a good move for a team that's in a phase where they're rebuilding. And listen, Mason Graham, he's going to have an immediate impact on this defense. And with Myles Garrett alongside him, like they could be wreaking havoc for years to come. So that's an exciting sort of thought that should get Browns fans excited about him as a player, even though it maybe wasn't who you wanted them to take.
Yeah, and I think it'd become a quick fan favorite. One of the quotes that stuck out to me right away, Andrew Berry, I think it was the first thing he said was that Mason was a DNA fit for this team and for this franchise. And it's like, yeah, I mean, they probably have some ways to classify these guys, but like you said, he fits in what Jim Schwartz does really well. He's going to fit in this city. He's going to fit as a Cleveland Brown, whereas maybe some of the other guys on the board maybe weren't as good of a fit as him. So it's taken me 4 hours, but I've come around.
He's come around, everybody. I think this is a good place to pivot to what this all means for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We know the Browns pick at 33. They have the first pick on day 2 in the second round. That pick's really valuable. There will be teams likely calling the Browns to maybe move back again and because they want to move up. Maybe some of those teams want a quarterback. Right now, the Browns are slated to make 4 picks tomorrow. I could see that becoming 5 if they do trade back because they could get maybe an additional third. And they get, they'd probably like a second swap in there somewhere where they get they'd swap second rounders and then they're still on the clock at 36. So here's my thing. I know everyone's looking and saying like, oh, it's going to be Shedeur Sanders, who obviously fell tonight, or it's going to be Jalen Milroe, like they're going quarterback. Guys, I got news for you. if your first pick on the offensive side of the ball is a quarterback that you're taking in the second round, so you don't necessarily think he's like a standout franchise quarterback anyway, like it's going to be a project at this point, and you set yourself up to potentially move up next year to get a quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, why would you pull the trigger on? Why would you, with all these needs on offense? Why would the first thing you would do, in day two be we're taking a quarterback here when we set ourselves up to maybe take one next year, and we have all these other offensive needs to address before the quarterback even really matters all that much for this team? Like, that just doesn't add up to me. That because if they're back taking a quarterback next year, you're all going to look back and be like, so wait, they didn't take a guy that they could have like helped the offense at 33, and they took a quarterback that's not even going to be playing after a year, like because they got this other dude now. That doesn't add up. That doesn't add up to me. So I don't think quarterback is going to be the move at 33. I actually think going in tomorrow, they probably do trade back again, if I'm being honest, which I know isn't what anybody wants to hear, but that's what it feels like is going to be sort of like the top item on the menu for Cleveland is that they move back again and maybe don't pick until 36 and then somewhere else in the second round. And then we can sort of talk through what players that means, but that's kind of what I think is at least going to matter. What at least is going to happen with the pick 33.
Spence, I think we have to be very realistic about. We have to look back on everything that's been said, and particularly what Jimmy said a couple weeks ago was like, "Yeah, we're not going to force it. We're going to build this team back up." And you're like, "Okay, maybe it's smoke and mirrors at that point." And then they start talking about Andrew Berry. What a sales pitch by Andrew Berry, calling Travis Shohei and doing all that stuff, and then all of a sudden he deals him. It's like that's pretty good. He got all of Cleveland to believe that the Browns were about to take him. So like I think we have to be very look all the way back at everything that's been said and be like, wait a second, this team is going to. There's going to be more. What we saw at the start of tonight wasn't an outlier. What we saw at the start of tonight may be more of the norm for this entire draft, where they're going to try to stockpile picks in each round and just try to get very quality players that can be foundational pieces on rookie contracts, so they're not as expensive. I think that you make a really good point. If trading out of 33, I wouldn't expect to see Shedeur Sanders as a Cleveland Brown. I think that's kind of where I'm sitting at it too.
Yeah, I mean, unless he keeps tumbling through the third round and then maybe the value gets there. But this feels like to me they're going to wait on quarterback. Like they'll wait for Jalen Milroe maybe in the third. They'll wait for Tyler Shuck in the third. Like I agree with you at this point. I think the Shedeur Sanders dream is kind of over because I don't think they're going 1 at 33. I think they trade back, and then what in terms of guys that are available, like the options are sort of endless here. The Ohio State running backs are potentially in play at 36, Henderson or Quinshon Judkins, who obviously I love and I know you love as well. Mm-hmm. Caleb Johnson comes into focus. Luther Burden, still there. And since you didn't take Travis Hunter, receiver, still a pretty high priority. The Browns need tight end. Now I think they might wait on tight end, but they need tight end. They need offensive tackle. Josh Connerly, who we've mocked to the Browns a couple times. He's still on the board as far as I remember. I sort of there were some middle of the first round picks that I missed because I was doing other things, but I don't think Connerly's gone. So there's some options here. There's a lot of different directions they could go. I do think offense will be the primary focus of many of the picks that are made on day two, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be at 33 because I think the Browns will maximize that pick as well, get even more draft capital, which might include maybe another second next year. Which, again, think about this from the perspective of like what's going to happen over the next year. They're trying to set themselves up to potentially trade up for a quarterback. Mm-hmm. If they do that, you're going to have, multiple picks to maybe do that with if you have a second rounder, 2 second rounders next year and 2 first rounders next year. So that's at least the way I'm approaching it. But, yeah, there's a number of names that still make sense, and I do think offense will become a priority for this team after taking Graham tonight with a lot of these day 2 picks.
Don't want to disappoint you, but Josh Connerly is off the board. He went
Where'd he go?
29 to Washington. Good pick by the way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And Kelvin
Yeah.
Banks went after him, right? Didn't Kelvin Banks go to the Chiefs? Yeah, that's right. Okay.
No. Okay. All right. Stick to
Who
the
did the Chiefs take?
Josh Simmons from Ohio State.
That's right.
Good.
That's right.
And Banks went earlier. Maybe I'm going to try to.
Sorry.
I'm just spinning through.
I should have paid more attention to the draft.
Hey, the big one. No. Kelvin Banks was the big one at 9. He went to New Orleans.
Oh yeah, that's right. He did go early.
And that was the first time.
Yeah, sorry. I remembered seeing Banks' name go up. I missed Connor.
Everyone was like, "What the hell's going on in Cleveland?"
Well, that was also like we were in the midst of press conferences and all these different things. But I missed Connerly, 100% missed Connerly. So
no,
I
would just add one thing to what you said, that I think the Browns have to go offense. You can go foundational on offense, but I think at some point you have to go offense. This offense, you cannot carry what you carried last year into a season. You need a receiver. You need to beef it up. I understand if you want to gain more capital, and if that's the goal, fine, go do it. But at some point when you start picking these guys, I think they're going to have to start majoring on the offensive side of the ball, and I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later today.
So the big takeaway for me for day one is start coming up with your slogan for the 2025 season about what quarterback you want. Maybe it's no wins for Nussmeier. Maybe it's suck for Sellers. I don't know what it is, but that's where I'm at with this right now for the Cleveland Browns. I think they will be taking a quarterback in this draft at some point. It'll be a project guy. It'll be a Jalen Miller. It'll be a Tyler Shuck. We'll see, because they need to fill out that room somehow, and they do need to field an offense. And that was the other point I made to somebody who tweeted at me like, "How do we know they don't just go best player available?" Will Johnson's still out there. They mentioned Mike Green is still out there. I actually really like Mike Green's game. Yeah. Could they go best player available? Sure, I guess. But at some point, you got to go offense, because they do need to put an offense on the field next year, and they're missing a lot of pieces right now. Yeah. I saw the comments you threw out there. Somebody said Will Howard. What's funny about Will Howard is like it's the one quarterback they haven't been linked to whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So it almost feels like it'd be fitting that is the guy they end up with.
Yeah. And Andrew Berry's going to be laughing like the Joker when he makes the pick. Like, I got all you guys. You guys all thought
it was Milrow. You thought Shador.
You thought we were going to go Hunter and Shador. That would have been fun. No, we went Mason Graham.
Yeah, the dream is dead.
Waited.
The dream is dead. All righty, guys. We'll let you get some sleep here. I need some sleep. Megs needs some sleep. We appreciate you hanging out though and staying up late with us on this draft night. If you're somebody who's disappointed, what did somebody say? Oh, I see. Somebody said be asked for Arch. That's pretty funny.
I'm not gonna pull it up because I'll get in trouble. But shout out Ronnie.
I hope I don't get in trouble for saying it, but it's fine. We can get away with some of that on a YouTube channel. Regardless, if you're somebody who is disappointed by what went down tonight, I encourage you to get some sleep and sleep on it and wake up tomorrow and realize the sun comes up and the Browns have opportunities to still get better this weekend. And they got a bunch of draft capital that should help them in the long term, whether it's taking just more players to add to this roster down the line or setting themselves up to maybe trade up for a quarterback next year. So the future is brighter, even though it might not look like that at this very moment. And as always, I encourage you to head on over to Cleveland Browns on SI. The actual URL, of course, is si.com/NFL/Browns to check out any of our written content. I got a story going up in the morning with some comments from Mason Graham that he had.
I got one going up here in about a half hour about somebody who liked the Browns trade, a former NFL coach who liked the Browns. Okay.
Megs is still over here cooking, typing away, so check that out as well. And stay and hang out at the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel as well, where we got the post pick press conferences from Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. We'll have Mason Graham in the flesh tomorrow, so that'll go up there for you. Subscribe to the channel so you can get this content at your fingertips at any time, and also more content like this, where Megs and I just break stuff down, or podcast, or do whatever it is that we do to provide content for you. We appreciate your support as always. Thanks again for staying up late with us. Day one in the books. Day two coming tomorrow with a lot of picks on the table for the Cleveland Browns to make. Appreciate you stopping by and keep on following along with all things Cleveland Browns with the Cleveland Browns on SI.